every day on March 2nd, 2004. A few days before March Madness, a few days to spending a hot vacation once spring comes back again. But today, Rosetta, a small spacecraft, gets shot up into space. A spacecraft set to take samples of a comet 67P. As Rosetta zoomed out of the Earth's atmosphere, it took this amazing picture at about 15,000 miles away from the Earth. It gives us an awesome feeling of how if we're treating our world good or not. At about 238,000 miles from the Earth, it shows our moon in a stage called the waxing crescent. It really gives a feeling of how dull our moon really is. At about 125 million miles from the Earth, Rosetta takes what is potentially the most viewed image of the red planet Mars. It shows its polar ice caps and orange-red surface, also detailing its largest mountain, Olympus Mons. It also takes a picture of what is to be thought as the forgotten Martian moon, Phobos. No images are with Deimos, however, but for now, Rosetta was the first spacecraft to give a perfectly colored image of the red planet beyond our blue marble. It comes across an 100-kilometer object hidden deep in the rocky, somewhat icy core of the asteroid belt. It made some new discoveries about Lutetia, and it also won a record for the first spacecraft to take a picture of Lutetia. And then it went off to 67P. Finally, in August of 2014, 10 years into the mission, Rosetta met 67P. And went off to discover more about its geologic surface features. Being its only passenger at 32 meters, led the Philae lander. The Philae lander would land on its surface with a load of samplers ready to send back any dust from 67P back to the Earth. As it descended onto the surface and became the first robotic spacecraft to land on a comet, the Philae lander would use an instrument called the MUPUS and would stick it into the 67P in soil, grabbing any info from its soil to the spacecraft. The Philae lander was studying the 67P minerals and rocks, and learned that comets may have been the key to starting life on Earth. As some scientists said at the ESA, during the early years of the solar system, when cometary bombardments were more common, believe comets carrying organic compounds crash into the Earth, seeding future life. Although this is not confirmed due to time traveling not existing, we can study the short periods of time where we got signals from the Philae lander. Due to its 24/7 connection with the Earth, it sent back more info about its surface. Although the images from the Philae lander went scarce or are kept by the ESA, we did learn about its geologic surface features more than any other comet at that time. But as the mission got more successful, turned a dark point in time. The Philae lander was supposed to keep studying its surface for 6 weeks, or about a month on Earth. But as time progressed, the more damage would be killing the probe. But as Rosetta landed the small 32-meter probe, the strong consequence came into perspective. About 63 hours into the mission, or about 3 days later, the Philae lander could not hold on to its gravity, due to 67P not having that strong of a gravitational force. But at that time, it only grew more complex in the next few hours before the big announcement. As the Philae lander was studying the 67P surface, Rosetta was orbiting the small 4-kilometer comet. But before anybody knew it, the time struck hour 63. And as the mission couldn't get any worse, the Philae lander lost connection with its parent spacecraft, killing the mission eternally. Although Rosetta didn't know what was going on, the spacecraft did know that it lost connection with its soil sampler. And as it couldn't get any worse, nobody knew where the Philae lander was. But only a few days before the Rosetta mission was about to end, the Rosetta spacecraft saw what didn't seem to be a 67P in rock. As the last days of the Rosetta mission sprung to life, Rosetta finally took the last picture we'd ever see of the Philae lander, ever. As you can see right here, it doesn't look like a mineral from the 67P in soil, but it does look like a robotic spacecraft that Rosetta could have sent down to its surface. Finally, Rosetta got what was to be thought the saddest news of a robotic spacecraft we've ever witnessed. It's to be thought that the Philae lander didn't lose connection for some unknown reason, but it did because when Rosetta landed it, it was on the edge of a cliff. Philae then bounced off of the surface when in first contact with it, but soon the Philae lander fell off the cliff, damaging its contact panels less than a week of a landing on its surface. This gave scientists an understanding of how bumpy a comet can really be. But to this day, it is unknown how the Philae lander fell off the 67P in soil. After a wild wait to see if any connection would reunite the two spacecraft, the ESA ended the mission on September 30th, 2016, with the last few images from the spacecraft ever taken. Finally, the last seconds came, and on September 30th, 2016, at 3:50 p.m., the probe smashed into the 4-kilometer comet, taking the last image of the Rosetta mission before coming apart of the rocky land. The Rosetta mission will remain a part of history for centuries to come, marking the first probe landing on a comet, that being 300 million miles from our home planet. Rosetta and the Philae lander will forever be a part of our space exploration, sticking with millions to come.